Hello, fellow travelers. Under the watchful gaze of crows perched high above, we embark on a journey etched in shadow and ink, and guided only by the trembling needle of a compass that defies reason. Take a deep breath as we unravel the unknown.
Hello fellow travelers, my name is SG and welcome to the channel. Today we'll be looking at another forgotten gem, but this time was requested by one of you, by a follower that has been themselves on YouTube as well, called Bump in the Night. Now I did like this movie, I really do enjoy it, and I do think that it's really caught a lot of steam in recent years as a cult classic. Now I do want to cover it, and I feel that it is important to talk about, mainly because it is one of the more successful live-action interpretations of a beloved character that we know. And that being, of course, the movie Hook, starring Robin Williams as Peter Pan. Now, with all that being said, please leave a like, comment, subscribe down below. Thanks again for all the support. I'm going to try to be more frequent with my uploads from this point on. And let's get started, shall we? Hook was originally released in 1991 and was directed by Steven Spielberg and written by James V. Hart and Malia Scotch Marmo. Originally, it was based on a book called Peter and Wendy by J.M. Barrie, and starred Dustin Hoffman as Hook, Robin Williams as Peter Pan, of course, Julia Roberts as Tinkerbell, Bob Hoskins as William Shmee, Maggie Smith as Wendy, and Dante Bosco as Rufio, which is the breakaway character for a lot of people in this film. The production of this movie was originally started in 1980 with the help of the Walt Disney Productions and Paramount Pictures. And while the film did ultimately manage to break even or even surpass its original price, opening weekend was not very well met, with it only earning $13.5 million of a almost $120 million budget. So for the most part, the film itself was considered a flop its very first week. But it did, as I said before, manage to make its overall earnings back at the very end of its run, earning a good $300.9 million at the very end of the day, with audience feeling a little less than ecstatic about the overall story, and even kind of little things that even Steven Spielberg himself feels he would go back and change. But, like I said, that's more for later. For right now, let's talk about the overall story, shall we? Now, the main story is this. About 30 to 50 years after the events of the original Peter Pan story, Peter has gone to the regular world, where he has continued to live a regular life, become a successful high-paying lawyer, and has a family with the granddaughter of Wendy. And at this point he has either forgotten or chooses to forget his whole life as Peter Pan, and of course the Lost Boys, and has ultimately become a darker, cynical version of an adult. So much so that he pretty much ignores his own kids and his wife in the pursuit of more profit from his business. Until on one day on Christmas, his kids are kidnapped by his old adversary, Captain Hook, and are taken to Neverland in an effort to try to corner him and or get their revenge. With the help of Tinkerbell, who was following behind Captain Hook's ship, manages to help Peter Pan get to Neverland despite his own ability to fight back this whole fantasy world, and reconnect with the Lost Boys, who have a new leader at this point named Rufio. And according to them, the legend of Peter Pan still remains, and has continued on for several years now, with the Lost Boys helping Peter recover his happiest memories growing up as a little kid. Peter also gives them a certain something that they didn't even really need, which is something that Rufio kind of either resents or kind of accepts that he realized he needed. And what that is, I'm going to talk about a little later. But after connecting again with the Lost Boys and Rufio, Peter goes off to find his kids and battle Captain Hook one more time in their last conflict. Now, I would go on to greater details, but I really do think that you should go and check out the movie yourself. You can see it now on YouTube or Amazon.com. It does have a lot of places you can watch it. It's a very funny movie, it's a very fun movie, and I do think that it does deserve a lot of the attention that it's recently gotten. It has become a cult classic despite it not really having that big of reviews. So for the most part, with that being said, let's move on, shall we? First off, let me just say, Robin Williams as Peter Pan is great casting. I think it did fit. You can definitely tell the dynamic between him being his younger self to the dynamic of him being his older self. It really does give off this original vibe, and you can really see him being Peter Pan younger. So for the most part, the casting of both Robin Williams and even Dustin Hoffman who plays it very silly, if you will, but at the same time very serious, kind of giving a theater performance at the same time while trying to give a serious performance. So Dustin Hoffman also knocks it out of the park as Captain Hook. These two, as the main leads, did lead to a great set of characterizations of the original characters, with Julia Roberts as Tinkerbell being an either or for fans for the most part. I know a lot of fans do enjoy more of her Disney look rather than anything else, and she really ultimately didn't play too much into the original storyline, though she is a big part of it. It is one of those kind of castings that most people will either question or just accept ultimately. But the overall consensus seems to be that the breakaway character of the movie has to be Dante Bosco as Rufio. Many people seem to have really liked his character, the way he brought a new element into the Lost Boys kind of dynamic, more of a serious tone to him, trying to be Peter Pan, but trying to be the new age version of him, if you will, while at the same time giving the same respectable characterization that we have in the original. So for the most part, I will have to say that the casting, the characters, and even the actors seem to be very well done and met in this kind of situation, or in order, if you will. The settings that were given are very well done. I do think that it does offer a lot of what we see in the original Peter Pan books, but you can also see the Disney inspiration behind it, using a lot of the original characterizations from the original book of the same title, well, not the same title, of Pure Windy, and at the same time using the Disney inspirations along with the original story of Peter Pan to kind of combine into this newer age era of Neverland, giving into the fantasy still, but giving into that pirate era themes as well too. So for the most part, I do have to say the setting does fit the storyline they're trying to go for and the idea that they're sitting on. And a lot of things work, some things don't. I do think that a lot more elements could be done more practically, but ultimately I do think that it does come together to make a nice looking movie, if you will. It is very interesting, very fun to watch, and very interesting to look at, and to see all the little details they put in throughout the rest of the film. Now, the major consensus that seems to be around this movie is that the one thing that it did extremely right was the original score, or the music. It's by John Williams. Now, John Williams has worked with Steven Spielberg in Jurassic Park, E.T., and several other kinds of titles that he's been in. That's just to name a few of the 100 that he's done. But in this movie specifically, he seemed to won the Film Music Award by the BMI Film and TV Awards, considering that this was what everyone considered being one of his best works and the best part of the movie Hook. So, if it comes down to it, it does have to agree upon, at least everybody does, is that the music and the musical score was practically the best part of the movie. While some may not agree, I do think that it did play an important part and kind of gave the whimsy that we do see in the Peter Pan kind of era and the mixing of it all. So, for the most part, I do have to agree that this did deserve the award it got. Now, when it comes down to critical response, it has to say that it gets a mixed or average review. That meaning that it's either a 4.7 out of 10 for the most part, or just a 50. Not many people have agreed on that this is a great movie, but most can admit that it is very good. With the actors and the characterizations they show, and of course, as I said before, the music does seem to add it all together, they do feel that it's too average, if you will, or too sappy, trying to be too sugary for the most part for them, adding mostly no substance to the overall story. Feeling that's trying to get the point across while at the same time trying to live up to this fantasy element, and it does not do both very well. So for the most part, most critics seem to agree that that's where it would land. And even Steven Spielberg says that while he originally thought it was a very good film, he could definitely see the flaws in it now, saying he would have fixed so many things he could nowadays if he got a second chance at doing it, such as the practical effects or the special effects themselves, saying they could have been better tuned or fairly well done. And while he does seem to have not the highest regard for it, he will say what's still good about it overall. Steven Spielberg, along with the other writers, agreed that while the movie's not perfect, they do feel that they got the main themes or the story they wanted out overall, and that being that it should not be able to forget your childhood self. or even forget the adult self. Because in the making of this movie, or right before the production of it, Steven Spielberg admits that he was kind of riding high on his current success, but at the same time kind of realizing that he's losing that spark as a child he had. And he noticed that many other people or adults were as well. And he just reminded himself of his own father even at the end of the day, who he himself admits that he was not that close to. So when he read this story, or the original Peter and Wendy, he felt such a big connection to it, and remember that he's loved Peter Pan growing up as well, that he felt he needed to make this movie and make the themes as kind of on the nose as possible. And saying that he overall just did not want people to forget to live a little, to embrace that inner child of their own, and try to make life a little more interesting. That's why when Peter originally was getting to know the Lost Boys and kind of remembering himself, he took to being able to be a kid a little more and kind of understand his own kids at the very end of the day. But at the same time, he kind of wanted to relay that Peter needs to be an adult. He's an adult and need to act like it, such as with Rufio. Now, there's a small clip towards the end where Rufio has that incident. I'm not going to talk about it right now because that's a spoiler, where he said he wished he had a parent just like Peter was. And that kind of gives the idea that while it's great to be a kid, it's also good to be an adult for the kids you have. Again, much more less about keeping your childhood innocence or keeping your adult mindset. It's more of just finding that middle ground. Being able to be the adult, but being able to wind down, being able to understand your kids and be able to kind of connect the dots with all the people around you. Basically, trying not to be a very big cynic. And learning kind of to smell the roses, if you will, from time to time. And learning to love and appreciate those around you and those you may not see anymore. I think that's kind of the interesting dynamic between Peter and Rufio as well. With Peter not really knowing that he needs to embrace the childhood aspect of himself, and Rufio kind of being the mirror version of Peter Pan in his younger years, not really realizing that he needs that adult figure in his life as well. So if you really wanted to say anything, this movie is about accepting both of those sides of yourself. Accepting the responsibility, but accepting the imaginative side, the relaxed side, the side that can go out and do something, while at the same time knowing you have to do business. And I think that's the overall idea that Steven Spielberg tried to put forward, and it seems to be that he did it very well. It's just that not many people received it very well either, considering that the story was too on the nose or tried to be too sappy ultimately. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really did enjoy this movie. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe down below. Leave a suggestion if you guys have another one that you want me to look at, or if there's another cult classic or a film or even whatever you feel like you want somebody to talk about, whether it's gone under the radar or hasn't been talked about in a long time. Now, with that being said, thanks again to Bump in the Night for suggesting this movie. I really will continue on watching other ones, and hope you guys enjoy it, and see you guys next time. Have a great one. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, and see you next time.